You don't belong here. Get on your knees, that's what the officer said as he shoved her down his elbow, digging into her back so hard she could barely breathe. The morning sun was bright, the grass damp with dew, and yet it felt like she was on fire. All she'd done was walk down a quiet street in a red suit, briefcase in hand, heading to a community event. But for Officer Ryan Maddox, that was reason enough. And for Olivia Carter, that was the moment her entire life changed. Maplewood Lane was one of those suburban streets you'd see on a postcard, white picket fences, SUVs polished to a shine, neighbors who waved from their porches while sipping coffee. It was quiet, safe, the kind of place where folks left their doors unlocked. And that's exactly why Olivia was there, invited to speak at a free legal aid clinic hosted by a colleague. She was 32, an attorney who'd fought her way through law school scholarships in courtrooms full of men who'd underestimated her, and now she was finally in a position to give back. But the look she got as she walked down that street told her a different story. Curtains twitched. Conversations stopped. People glanced at her like she was a stray dog sniffing around their manicured lawns. Then she heard it, the slow roll of a cruiser creeping behind her. The hum of the engine was louder than the birds. Olivia didn't even have to turn around to know who it was. She'd felt that tension before, years of random traffic stops, questions about why she was somewhere she didn't belong. But she kept her pace steady, her head high. "Morning, ma'am," the officer said as he got out. His sunglasses reflected her back at herself, cold and unreadable. "Can I see some ID?" "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked, calm but wary. He didn't answer. Instead, he glanced at her briefcase, then back at her. "You live around here. I'm visiting a colleague for an event." "I have an invitation," she said, pulling her wallet from her bag, deliberately announcing every movement the way her mother had taught her as a teen. "Never move too fast. Keep your voice even." Ryan Maddox barely glanced at her ID. "City address," he muttered. "Yes, I live downtown." He stepped closer, invading her space. "People get nervous seeing strangers walking through here, especially dressed like that." Olivia's smile was polite, controlled. "I'm sure they appreciate your concern for their safety." He didn't smile back. "Just doing my job." His hand hovered near his radio. "There have been some break-ins lately." "Then you'll be glad I'm not a burglar," she said softly. His jaw tightened. That's when he called for backup. Within minutes, 2 more officers pulled up. Lisa Rourke, all sharp cheekbones and an attitude that screamed power trip, and Doug Peters, a big guy with a stare like ice. They didn't ask questions. Lisa ordered her to put her briefcase on the ground. Doug grabbed her arm before she could even respond, twisting it hard enough to make her wince. "Hey, there's no need for this." Olivia tried to protest, but Doug's grip was like iron. Lisa crouched over her briefcase, rifling through papers and files, tossing them aside like trash. "What are you hiding, huh?" "Pills of blade work documents," Olivia said through gritted teeth. Doug jerked her arm higher. "Keep your hands where I can see them." "Please," Olivia whispered, her voice breaking. "For just a second, I haven't done anything wrong." Lisa stood smirking. "They always say that." Ryan shoved her shoulder, guiding her toward the grass. "Kneel," he ordered. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought they could hear it. "Officer, please." "I said kneel." When she hesitated, Doug kicked the back of her calf. Pain shot up her leg and she crumpled to one knee. Lisa yanked her other arm back, snapping the cuff so tight she felt her skin split. From across the street, a phone camera light blinked red. A neighbor's voice carried, "Oh my God. They're arresting her." For what? Olivia's cheeks burned. The humiliation was worse than the pain. She was a lawyer, a guest in this neighborhood, and now she was on her knees in the dirt, surrounded by cops who treated her like a criminal. Ryan leaned down, his voice a hiss only she could hear. "People like you always bring trouble." Lisa's hands searched her pockets, and then came the gasp. "She's armed." Olivia froze. She knew exactly what Lisa had found, the small pistol she legally carried. Registered in her name, bought after she'd been threatened during a high-profile trial. But that didn't matter now. Lisa held it high for the crowd to see. "Gun." Ryan pulled his weapon and pressed it against the back of Olivia's head. "Move, and I'll shoot." The crowd erupted, some gasping, some yelling, some murmuring. "Told you. They're all the same." Doug slammed his boot on her back, grinding her into the grass. The taste of dirt filled her mouth as she tried to shout that the gun was legal, that she had a permit, that she'd never resisted. But her words were drowned out by Lisa waving the pistol like a trophy, smiling for the cameras now gathering around. By the time they dragged her to the cruiser, blood was running down her wrists, staining her suit. Phones followed every step. She was shoved into the back seat like a rag doll, and as the door slammed shut, Olivia stared out at the street where her life had just been rewritten. At the station, the humiliation continued. They dragged her through hallways, cuffed and bruised, while officers snapped photos on their phones. Lisa cleaned the blood on Olivia's wrist roughly like she was wiping up a mess, not treating a person. "You people never learn," she sneered. Chief Warren Huxley arrived, a man with a belly of authority and eyes that had seen too many complaints swept under the rug. He knelt down, his voice low and menacing. "Here's how this goes. You sign this confession, say that gun was unregistered, admit you resisted, and you get out of here tonight. Make trouble, and I'll make sure you don't see daylight for a long time." Olivia looked him dead in the eyes, tears brimming, but refusing to fall. "I want a lawyer." Warren's smile was thin. "Suit yourself. Most regret that choice." She was thrown into a holding cell, left on the cold floor. And yet outside those walls, the world was already catching fire. The first video went viral within hours. A teenager had filmed everything from his bike, the shove the gun to her head, the insults. By midnight, hashtags like #Justice for Olivia and #Kneeling for No Crime were trending nationwide. A famous musician retweeted the clip. How many more times a law professor wrote a thread breaking down every constitutional violation. The outrage spread like wildfire. That's when Marcus Bennett, a well-known civil rights attorney, saw her photo, a woman in a red suit, face pressed into the grass, a gun at her head, and decided he was getting on a plane. By the time Olivia was scheduled for arraignment, crowds had formed outside the precinct, signs in hand, chants echoing through the streets. Marcus walked in like he owned the place, cameras flashing. "I'm here to represent Olivia Carter, and I demand her immediate release." Reporters swarmed him, but Marcus didn't stop. He held up her concealed carry permit, laminated and legal. This woman committed no crime. This is state-sanctioned brutality, plain and simple. Warren tried to push back, sputtering about resisting arrest, but Marcus wasn't having it. The only thing she resisted was humiliation, he said, his voice carrying through the station. And then a quiet voice from the crowd. "I have something you need to see." A neighbor, Raleen Foster, stepped forward, clutching a USB drive. She'd had security cameras on her porch. The footage showed everything: Ryan calling Olivia trash, Doug kicking her, Lisa smiling as she cuffed her. The words were clear, undeniable. When the footage played on the station's main screen, the room fell silent. Reporters gasped. Officers looked at their shoes. The mayor arrived within hours, her voice trembling with anger as she announced the immediate suspension of all 3 officers. But it wasn't over. Protests swelled. People shared their own stories of harassment, teenagers humiliated in school parking lots, parents frisked in front of their kids. The movement grew, and Olivia's face became the symbol of something bigger. She was invited to a national talk show days later. Sitting under harsh studio lights, her wrists still bandaged, she told her story with a calm that made people lean closer. "I survived," she said softly, "but I won't let them bury the truth." Marcus spoke next, his words sharp as a blade. "This isn't policing. This is punishment, and it happens every day." The producers brought Ryan Maddox onto the screen live from a hidden location. He tried to defend himself. She wouldn't comply. "I had to act," but the host played the footage unedited, his slur ringing loud and clear. Social media exploded. And then, just as Olivia was reclaiming her voice, chaos erupted back home. A small group of extremists opened fire on protesters outside the Maplewood precinct. The footage of people running, screaming, bleeding hit every news channel. And yet, even as fear rippled through the country, support for Olivia only grew stronger. The FBI launched an investigation into the entire department. Months later, Maplewood unveiled a monument where she'd once been forced to kneel. A bronze statue of a Black woman standing tall, wrists free, head held high. Engraved on the base, "Stand tall, never kneel again." Olivia stood at the front of the crowd, the same red suit now perfectly pressed, her scars still visible. Children touched the statue, parents wept quietly, and for the first time in a long time, she felt safe. But as the cameras flashed, she couldn't help but wonder, how many other stories never made it this far? How many names never got justice? So I'll ask you, what would you have done if you'd seen her on that lawn? Would you have stepped in, recorded, stayed silent? Drop your thoughts below. Because justice isn't just a headline, it's a choice we all make.